Hello in the first chapter of my course about Berlin defense. In the first lecture I would like to show you two games from the World Championship match between Anand Viswanathan and Magnus Carlsen played in 2013. First game will be from the round number 4. Okay, so let's move on. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5 and knight f6. This is obviously the Berlin defense. Anand decided here to play castle kingside. This is of course one of the possible moves against knight f6. Knight e4, d4, knight d6, bishop c6, dc6. Everything is of course right now very well known position. And king d8, this is the big starting position of this famous endgame in Berlin defense. h3. This is of course one of the possible moves from Viswanathan Anand. We are going to analyze other options in next chapters. In this lecture I would like not to focus on opening things, but just to show you the typical ideas and typical maneuvers in this opening. So bishop d7, rook d1, bishop e7. If king c8, this is of course also very typical for this defense. Then after g4, knight e7, knight g5, bishop e8. Positions in Berlin defense quite often remains quite passive, but bishop pair is simply ready just to become very active and very powerful, so definitely white has to be careful. f4 and h5. This is very typical for Berlin defense, just opening the h file, so our rook from h8 can become really active. King f2, b6, f5, king b7. Of course, it is very useful just to move king, so right now it will be easier to connect our rooks on 8th rank. c4, c5, bishop f4, knight c6, knight c3, and I would say that this is typical position for Berlin endgame. For sure white has better pawn structure, but on the other hand, as I mentioned, bishops are simply waiting to become very active. So this position should be approximately equal. So this was something else that black could try. Instead, the world champion tried a very normal and very logical looking move, bishop e7, simply developing the bishop. Knight c3. Let's have a look at some other options for white. If g4, immediately again attacking our knight on f5, then it is useful just to exchange the pair of knights. Knight d2, king c8, knight f3, bishop e7, rook d3 and h6. Definitely Berlin defense is very maneuvering opening, so black shouldn't be hurry and just to make such small useful moves. Knight d4, rook e8, bishop f4, c5, knight f5, bishop f8, c4, a6. Of course, at some point black can try a move like b5, just to gain some advantage on queen side. And after knight e3, here it comes b5, b3, and again some move of the pawn g5, bishop g3, bishop e6. Personally, I would like to play such position with black pieces, because I think that he has more logical and simply easier play in such position. And as I mentioned, bishop pair can become very strong in such structure. Okay, so this was something what could happen after g4. If bishop g5 just to exchange dark squared bishops, then king c8. And right now g4 doesn't work well. Of course, knight c3 is the normal move, after which the position remains equal. And right now black is ready to grab some small advantage. After bishop e7, bishop d2 simply doesn't look to me logical because white has lost tempo. And right now black has even the pawn on h6. And after h5 again, I think that it is already black who is slightly better. So if white played this move bishop g5, then I think that he should take on e7. After knight e7, king h2, rook e8, knight bd2, b6, rook e1, c5, knight e4, bishop c6, h4, king b7. I think that right now black is already slightly better. Definitely, I wouldn't say that this would be really exciting variations or exciting positions. As you can see, these positions are really typical for maneuvering endgame, but I think that reaching such position with black pieces is very, very good. Okay, let's go back to the game. Knight c3 was played by Anand. King c8. Right now our light squared bishop is not pinned anymore. Bishop g5 at h6. Bishop e7, knight e7, rook d2. Of course, white can try this move a4, of course, but to me it doesn't look logical. On this wing, it is black who has 4 pawns and white has only 3 pawns, so he is weaker. So starting some play on queenside to me doesn't look good. Rook d2, of course there is no other plan for white, so he has to play it anyway. And e6, of course this is some chance for white. And after knight e5, rook e8, knight b5 takes c4, knight d5 c4, knight b6 h4. It is not that easy for black to make any progress, but on the other hand he is of course a pawn up, and it is white who has to do something active here. Okay, instead Anand doubled his rooks on d file immediately. d5, rook a d1. Some other normal move would be knight e4 and after b6, knight g3, bishop c6, knight h2. Again we have typical maneuvering endgame in which black is at least not worse. King b7, and this should be simply approximately equal. g6, and there is no invading points for white. Okay, so this is why Anand tried rook a to d1, bishop e6, knight e1. I think that this move doesn't look good. More logical move would be knight e2. So after knight g6, of course, bishop a2 is simply too greedy because right now black will have some troubles with his bishop. And playing such moves with not connected rooks and king on c8 simply shouldn't be so good. And here definitely white can hope for some edge, but computer still holds this position and thinks that black shouldn't be too bad. But of course, I think that this is not so good to go for such positions. Instead, knight g6 is a really solid and a good move. Knight g3, b6, knight h5, rook g8, a3, a5, and again this position should be simply fine for black. So, knight e1, this was played by Anand, and right now he's falling into some small troubles. Still nothing terribly bad for white. But after knight e2 it becomes quite tough for white. he shouldn't give up his a2 pawn and he should simply opt for the move like b3. Of course, black can exchange his doubled pawn, but still after f4, king b7, the advantage of black should be only slightly. Still, as I mentioned, when you are playing with black pieces, such positions and such endgames when you are slightly better are of course very, very good for you. And if f4, then of course c4. Rook f1, of course the only move, because this is simply losing a pawn and position becomes quite tough for white. Let's go back to this variation again. Rook f1, of course, some small tactics. f5 is the threat. But we can of course grab this knight on d3. f5, knight e5. f6, f6, rook e1. cd3 is again simply better for black. He is simply a pawn up. Of course his coordination is not the best, but still pawn is a pawn. So if white tries to chase our knight, then after knight c6, again, black is simply fine in that position. Okay, so let's go back. Knight e2. Right now this is the good moment just to be a little bit greedy and to take this pawn on a2. c4 wouldn't be so good idea, because in that position white can quite easy maintain the balance, because his pawns are becoming quite good and it is not that easy to hold on also for this pawn on d2. So this is why bishop a2 is the right choice. b3, c4, knight dc1, cb3, cb3, bishop b1. Unexpectedly, this bishop is not lost. Maybe this is something what Anand missed, or maybe that he thought that after rook d7, this very good move rook g8 guarantees some edge for black. Bishop c2, knight c6, and definitely this position is very, very good for black. What else? For example, of course, let's have a look also at something else. Because knight e5 is not so good, because rook e7, and despite that black is 2 pawns up, this activity guarantees white some good counter chances. And if e6, then of course simply grabbing this pawn. Right now black is 2 pawns up, and even g4 doesn't work, because knight e5, this small nice tactics, works very good for black. And again, this is a very good position for him. So, if rook d7, then knight f4, rook g7, and this very good rook move again guarantees black some good coordination right now, and of course he has some material, up. Okay, so Anand pushed his f-pawn to f4, king b7, knight c3, knight d3, then of course black can simply take, and he's a healthy pawn up. So this is why knight c3, bishop f5, g4, bishop c8, and although of course again black is slightly miscoordinated, he is simply a pawn up. He is very solid, and beyond any doubt he is simply better in this position. So knight d3 just to defend this hanging f4 pawn. h5, f5. Of course, Anand has to do something, not just to wait for his opponent. Knight e7. Knight h4 would be a mistake because this knight is right now a little bit stranded on h4. hg, hg, gf5. Knight b5, and white is becoming quite active. This is definitely not what black would like to have. Knight b5, hg4. This is not the best decision from Magnus Carlsen. Better was just to chase this knight with a move a6. After knight d4 takes, a5, black is ready to activate his rook via the a file. So after rook c1, a4, knight b5, of course, this is even worse. And after knight b5, knight c6, takes, rook d6, knight d5. This is the good move, which guarantees black very, very good chances. And this is quite an amusing position, and of course simply winning position, simply winning endgame for black. Some very good and really nice small tactics. Okay, so this is why hg4 here is premature. hg4. White is missing his chance. Of course, rook c1 was the right move. Then, of course, knight d5 would be the only move, because knight c6 is a clear blunder. Bishop d7, knight b4. And of course, this would be a disaster for black, so he shouldn't go for such line. Anyway, definitely white would grab some good activity. Rook h4. Again, some misplay. Of course, black should go for this line, which we saw previously. Knight f2. Knight c6. Right now, a6 would be very bad because knight d6 would simply save the game. So black has to be very careful not to give up his quite nice advantage. Rook c2, a5. If g6, then very unexpected resource, king f1. What's the point behind this move? After gf5, rook dc1, bishop d7. If rook h6, then g5, rook g6, knight d6, and again, white obtains sufficient counterplay. And if bishop d7, again, black has some problems with his pawn on c7. Of course, this was the point of playing king f1, so right now there will be no checks on e2 in some lines, of course, after king b8. Because rook d7 is right now possible, and there will be no fork on e2. Okay, let's move on. So knight c6 is the right decision, and a5. Rook c4. Of course, also Anand is playing the best move. Rook dc1, bishop d7, and everything is very well defended. And white has no counterplay. So rook c4 preventing any moves like a4. g6. If bishop f5, then of course rook c6. This is very good move. King c6, knight d4. And this position still is better for black, but white has many counter chances with his quite active knights. Of course, gf5 wouldn't be that good because white would lose a couple of pawns. So g6, rook dc1, bishop d7, e6. Anand is of course trying his chances because knight d4 is simply nothing for him. So e6, takes, bishop e8, knight e4, rook g4, king f2. Anand is playing all in and just putting everything on activity. Rook f4, and Magnus Carlsen is missing his chance. Rook d8 was the right decision. After king e3, rook d5, knight bc3, rook e5. Finally, he would grab some activity, and this position is very, very unpleasant for white because 3 pawns for the exchange are simply enough to have some good advantage and good winning chances. Rook f4, king e3, rook f8. Of course, this is some passive move, and this is why Anand is taking his chance and winning back at least one of the pawns. King d4. And king c3 here. Of course, king e5 would be quite good if not a mate on f5. And going back with the king, rook d5, rook h7, and there, of course, there is plenty of play, but still with some good drawing chances for white. Instead, Anand went with his king to queenside, rook f3, king b2, rook e3, rook c8, rook dd3. Of course, the only chance because any simplifications are a dead draw. So rook d to d3, rook a8, king b7, rook e8, rook e4. Still, of course, this position should be just a draw. Rook g3, rook c3, rook e2, rook c2, rook e3, king a2. Of course, black cannot take this pawn on b3 because white would queen. So g5, rook d2, rook e5, rook d7, king c6, rook e d8, rook g3. Of course, black should prevent queening. King b7, rook 8 to d7, king a6, rook d5, taking on d5 and taking on g5 and on e7 would result again with a draw. So Carlsen is checking white's king, rook e6, rook d8, g4, rook g5, rook e7, rook a8. Still after rook g4, rook f2, rook a8, king b7, rook e1, white would have to fight for a draw. So this would be a slightly inaccuracy. Instead, rook a8 is definitely a better move because this pawn on g4 is lost anyway. a4, rook f2, rook g7 with a draw. So Carlsen played a4, rook g4, a b3, and of course this is just theoretical draw. So very good defense from Anand Viswanathan, but of course when you are playing your World Championship match with white pieces, you would like not to fight for a draw with white pieces. So I think that this was a very good advertisement of Berlin defense. Let's have a look at the game between the same players from the same match, only 2 days after this game we saw. It would be the round 6 from the World Championship from 2013 between Anand and Carlsen. And of course again Berlin defense. As we can see here, Anand didn't go for this endgame because he noticed that he obtained absolutely nothing in this endgame. and he is opting for some calm positional play. But again, I think that this line is very good for black. Rook e8. Something else is d5. To me, if this move looks more interesting and worth trying, but of course rook e8 is the normal move. Rook e1. Other line is bishop g5, h6, bishop f8, d6, d4. Okay, but as I mentioned, this is not the topic of this chapter because we are not going to focus on the opening lines, just to show you some typical ideas. Rook e1, a6, bishop a4, b5. This remains something from the Spanish game, and of course this is very similar to it. After bishop c2, there is a chance of playing d5 and something like Marshall Gambit, but of course, again, some improved version. So bishop b3, this bishop is eyeing f7 pawn. d6. Right now d5 doesn't work good because d4 and position is opening with some favor for white. Bishop g5, bishop e6. After h6, bishop h4, bishop f6 is simply nothing. Black is very solid here. And if bishop e6, again, there are many different possibilities for white. I'm analyzing here some of them, but I think that, but again, this is not the topic of this chapter, but I would like to show you quite fast some of them. Bishop d6, knight c3, knight b4, queen d2, d5, and black gets some counterplay. And if bishop d5, then of course black can go for such position with some kind of unclear chances. But again, black shouldn't be worse. Knight bd2, h6, bishop h4. If bishop e6 takes, this rook standing quite well on f6, and right now this bishop is targeting f2 pawn. So bishop h4, bishop b3, a b3 and knight b8. Very interesting maneuver. Of course, black could opt for some other plan, but I think that this is very useful just to replace this knight. Bishop b6, knight f1, g5, with quite a typical game for this line. But knight b8 is a fine idea. h3, again, white has a wide choice of some different options. For example, queen c2, knight bd7, b4 c6 with approximately equal position. I think that black already quite comfortable equalized, and this is definitely something good when playing with black pieces when you want to play solid. Knight bd7, knight h2. Again, before, this is absolutely equal. So, knight h2, queen e7, knight df1. As you can see, white is dancing with his knights. He's trying to create some play on king side, but black's position simply has no weaknesses. Bishop b6. Of course, black could try some activity on queen side, but I think that this is unnecessary because right now there can arise some complications and the position is becoming quite sharp and also unclear. Bishop b6 is some fine move, prophylaxis against move d4. Knight e3, queen e6. b4 and a5. Of course, right now there will be no weakness on a6. ba5, bishop a5. Knight h to g4. If knight f5, then bishop b6, queen d2, d5, simply equalizing. Okay, knight h to g4, bishop b6, bishop f6. Quite an interesting choice from Vishwanathan Anand, but of course not without logic. Something else would be queen f3, and after knight g4, rook a4. Quite an interesting attempt. And again, black is ready to create some play on queenside. So Anand decided to simplify the position a little bit. Knight f6, queen f6, queen g4. Queen e2 was something else, and this should equalize immediately. And I think that opponents could just agree to a draw in such position. Queen g4, bishop e3, f e3, and again this position is equal. Queen e7, something else would be queen e6, and again the position is symmetrical and very drawish. Carlsen is still going to play for a win, so this is why he's not going to exchange queens. c5, king h2, c4, and d4. Right decision from Anand. Taking on c4 would create weaknesses on e4 and also on b2. Rook a1, queen b7. If e4 takes. And again, position simplifies and is absolutely equal. Again, Carlsen declines this possibility and is playing for something more. d5 would be here also quite an interesting decision, but I think that Anand wouldn't like to have such doubled pawns on e-file. Till after queen h4, he gets sufficient counterplay, and he wouldn't have any bigger problems. Rook d1, queen c6. Again, e4, rook d4, and white's activity is guaranteed for some equal chances. So queen f5, e4, rook d4, rook e5, queen f3. Of course, this can be a slightly concern for white, this doubled pawns on e3 and e4. But on the other hand, white is very solid, so he shouldn't have any bigger problems with obtaining a draw. King h1, of course, Anand is right now waiting for his opponent. King h7, queen f4, g6. Magnus Carlsen is slowly improving his position, and Anand is still waiting for his opponent. As we will see with the final result of the game, this is not a good tactic for him. Queen g3. He lost his right now. He is patient and he played this bad move, queen g3. Of course, he should simply wait, and after queen g3, again white is very, very solid. Queen g3. This gives some chances to Magnus Carlsen. Queen d6, rook e3. If queen d6, this would be not the best choice because this is obviously a clear draw. 2 on 3 on the same wing gives almost zero chances of winning. So rook e3. Queen e7, rook e7. This still should be a draw if white is defending quite precisely. But as we can see, Anand missed his fences. Rook d6. Marching with a king towards the center was also some fine idea. And this is a draw. Still, rook d6 is nothing terrible right now. So here white played h4, and here black played king f7. To me it looks that move h5 would guarantee some better chances. After king g3, black can transfer the rook to e5. And after rook b7, king h6, rook b6, of course black would still make white suffer a little bit in this rook endgame. Okay, but Carlsen decided to play king f7, and here Anand played the right move, h5. Right now this pawn structure on king side will be broken. Gh5, g5 is simply nothing because this is very good position with very good drawing chances for white, and black can simply make no progress. So I think that this is the right practical chance just to take on h5. Rook d5, king g6, king g3. Rook b6, rook c5, f5. King h4. King f4 would be the step to the wrong direction because, of course, white cannot touch this pawn on f5. After rook f6, king g4, king e5, king h4, king e4, king h5. This pawn endgame is simply lost for white because right now, with this very precise move, black is simply winning. If cb4, then c3, and queening with check on c1. So g6, c2, and after some exchanges of a queen with a check on h1 and on g1, black is simply winning. So Anand played the right move, king h4, rook e6. Also king f6 would give some drawing chances, but with some precise defense. This is just a draw according to table basis. But of course still black will try a little bit to win this position. Of course it's not that easy to go for such positions, so Carlsen is not forcing the matters. Rook e6, rook b5, rook e4. Finally this rook is becoming active. King h3, king g5, rook b8. Again, white could go for a theoretical draw after rook b8 because this is just quite an easy position to make a draw. Quite mysterious why Anand didn't right now go for such position, and he played rook b8. h4, rook g8, king h5, rook f8, rook f4, rook c8, rook g4, rook f8, rook g3, and right now at least black made some progress. And this is the first moment where Anand misplayed. Rook c8 was quite an obvious and quite an easy draw, just not letting black to make any bigger progress and simply winning this pawn on c4 and going for a drawish position. Of course, this check on g8 only helps black, and this winning pawn on c4 is not so that good because right now this activity of black is very good. But still, even after that misplaced, black had a draw after the move b4, of course. White should go for this active position. Rook c8, f3, rook e8, king f2, b5, rook g2, and rook e1 is simply drawing after b6, and both sides are queening. We will see the difference with this variation to the game. This is why the move rook a4 is losing. Because right now h3, rook g6, and right now rook a8, f3, b4, we are seeing the difference. Black is simply a tempo up, and right now this position is simply quite easy won. Rook f8, f2, and this is not so hard to see, but this position is simply won for black. So this is why this move rook a4 was so bad. But of course it's easy to see in the analysis. But of course, I think that Anand should notice this possibility. Rook g6, c4, f3, rook a3, king e2, and unfortunately for white, there's no check on a2. So b4, f2, check, king f3, rook e3, king f4, rook a8. Rook a1 is again losing after rook e6. So rook a8, rook g1, and this is the right moment to simply give up. As we can see from these two games between the World Championship, from the World Championship match between Anand and Carlsen, Berlin defense is a really good and very solid choice. And as you can see, there are also many chances to outplay your opponent. Okay, so this was the chapter number 1. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.